and having my glass of water to get me ready.
Ciao bambini.
Good morning and welcome to our whole school assembly.
Hola!
Let's get some learning on.
Welcome to another day of home learning.
Tick-a-tock, what time is it?
So we're going to work out the volume of this spring roll.
And they're all over the floor.
I consist of 95% water.
We learn grammar through the coolest tool, music.
Super goed.
Godt arbejde i dag, elever.
I just need to keep it up. I'm so proud of you. So well done.
Hello everyone and welcome. We are live from Leo Academy Trust. They have let me out of the building and out of my house. And we are here today with a webinar focused on using Chromebooks in the post-pandemic classroom. So I'm joined today for this webinar by some of the teachers here from Leo. Gillian and Natasha are both with us, and they're going to take us through how they use Chromebooks in their lessons to support teaching and learning here at Leo Academy Trust. So thank you for joining me this afternoon. Welcome. If you want to introduce yourself in the YouTube feed over on the right-hand side, feel free to pop in and say hello. And as we go through the webinar today, if you have any questions at all, pop your questions in the chat. And when we get to the end of today's webinar, we'll jump back in and we'll talk about those questions. Okay, so let's get started. What we're going to do is we're going to focus in, firstly, just introduce Leo. And we've got a short film to show that explains Leo's journey to this point.
This journey began a few years ago when we came together to develop a digital strategy to breathe new life into the way that staff work, that teachers teach, and ultimately the way that children learn.
It was really important for us to think about how are we making sure we're providing the very best teaching to all of the children in our schools.
We very much wanted to move forwards with cloud-based technology.
But we had to have an infrastructure suitable for children, but it also had to be useful for staff as well. What we decided to do was provide every child with their own Chromebook, and we adopted G Suite for Education, and then before we knew it, the magic really started to happen.
Okay, 311, I would like you to log into Google Classroom.
It's had a really transformational impact on the school.
Children embrace Google technology like a duck to water.
It was really easy once you got the hang of it. It was just really fun.
They're a lot more focused, they find the lessons a lot more fun, and the engagement just went through the roof.
Staff were able to get going quickly.
We were given time to just try things out for ourselves, and I think that was a really important stage of the process. It's reduced my workload massively, and I know more about my children.
At no point had we ever thought that Chromebooks for one-to-one would be a solution to a global pandemic.
But compared to other schools, our children and staff were used to working in the cloud, and through the use of Google Classroom and Google Sites, we were able to switch learning online and deliver lessons from day one of the lockdown.
Remember, you're figuring out what the value of the 9 is.
We worked quickly to ensure that every family had access to the internet.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another day of home learning.
Being at home, you don't see anybody.
I miss the support from teachers.
You're distracted with your siblings and your dog, and it's just really, it's annoying.
Children's well-being was really, really important to us.
We communicated with all of our parents on a daily basis.
We arranged Google Meets where we drop in with the children.
Can you think of something good that's happened because of lockdown?
I'm spending more time with my family.
Great answer, Bassy. Thank you for that.
Within that first week, Google Meets had happened, children were laughing together on screen. It was totally surreal, but while the buildings were physically closed, the school was open. The whole concept of a digital classroom and a digital school is exciting.
If we can provide them with those real basic digital skills now, we're really preparing them for their adult lives.
Okay, so that explains a bit of the background to where we are today. We are live from Leo Academy Trust, and we're here at Jean Common Junior School. And as we mentioned in the video, Leo are a one-to-one Chromebook school. So all the students at Leo have Chromebooks, and they bring them into school for use in their lessons and also using them at home to support their learning. I want to just start really by talking about what's on the screen right now and just talking about pens. All through my teaching career, all my 15 years in the classroom, I've worked in schools where pens have been around, and you don't really think about them, do you? And there's lots of different sorts of pens, like the simple one there, like the big one, or the fancy pen at the top of the screen with the multiple colours, like there's never enough red ink in there for my liking. But pens have been around and we don't think about them. I don't come into school thinking, I wonder if everyone's going to have a pen. I don't come into school thinking, how am I going to use a pen in my lesson today? It's just part of the furniture almost. It's part of the tools that as a teacher I can use when I want to draw upon them. And in different lessons, people use pens in different ways. So some teachers might use them in art in a very different way from the way you use them in English or in literacy. So pens have been there, we don't think about them. And really, for some teachers, and perhaps some of the teachers here at Leo, Chromebooks are in a similar sort of position, in that they just become almost part of the furniture within the school, become part of that sort of teaching and learning environment. And as teachers, we might draw upon using the Chromebooks at certain points, and we might not at other points in our lesson. And just like pens, there are basic ones that we can use, the simple Chromebooks, or we've got them sort of more advanced touchscreen Chromebooks and Chromebooks with styluses. So again, there's that range of choice and range of things there. But obviously with a Chromebook, there's a lot more we can do. That moves our learning on in different ways. And what we're going to focus on today is, well, what's that like in the classroom? What difference does that make if we are teaching and we've got Chromebooks around and we can draw upon them as teachers as a tool to use as part of teaching and learning? And one of the things I like to talk about when we're working with teachers is talking about impactful technology use. It's not just about using the computers for the sake of using computers. We want to make a difference when we're using the devices. So this is based on some of the work that was developed as part of the Dynamic Learning Project in the United States. And we'll share the links to our slides later. But we're going to really focus in today's webinar on how we can use technology to make a difference and make an impact on teaching and learning. So moving away from just maybe using technology to replace what we already did, but thinking about how we can use different tools to start to develop 21st century skills in our students. And we can see on this diagram here, there's a range of different focuses. The 4 C's are on there that we're going to focus on to develop certain skills. So we're going to today talk about selecting relevant technology, how we can improve the use of collaboration, how we can develop communication skills, how we can develop creativity and innovation skills, and also develop some critical thinking using the technology as a tool within our lessons, just like we would use a pen as a tool within our lessons. So that's what we're going to study, that's what we're going to dig into today as we go through today's webinar. Before we get into that, I want to talk about, firstly, selecting the relevant tools, because there's just a wealth of things out there, both within Google Workspace for Education and within the wider EdTech world. There's just a range of tools that you can use. So selecting the right tools is something that as a teacher, we have to think about. We're going to talk in today's webinar about a range of different tools that are out there that you could use. And what we want to do is just focus on sort of that making that right choice. And I suppose you might ask, how do I make the right choice? How do I know what I can use, what's appropriate? And Google have done some work in this space to help teachers. And if you haven't seen it already, a really great resource is the Chromebook App Hub. And the Chromebook App Hub provides, if you like, a dedicated directory of apps that work on Chromebooks as well as on any online device that are really useful to support teaching and learning. And so on the App Hub, you can see all the apps we're going to talk about today, all the tools we're going to talk about today are on there. You can read more about them. There are something we call idea sparks, and those are examples from teachers that have used Chromebooks in the classroom. So if you're wondering about different lessons or need ideas for that, you can go and look at the idea sparks. And for the apps themselves, there's data on how the apps work, in terms of the third-party apps and the GDPR links that sit around those apps. So it's a really great resource. Rather than having to go through the Google Play Store or search around through Chrome extensions to find the right thing, if you're using Chromebooks in the classroom, I'd fully recommend having a look at the Chromebook App Hub. So when it comes to picking the right tools, it's a really great place to start on your journey. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to some of the team at Leo. I'm going to dig into some of the apps that they use on their Chromebooks in the classroom and the different ways they use things. And to start with, we're going to talk about collaboration. And Natasha's going to join me to talk about how she uses Jamboard to start with. to do the collaboration next. Hi, Natasha.
Hi, Andy. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. My name is Natasha Kelly, and I am a Year 6 teacher at Leo Academy Trust. And when I was approached to do this presentation and asked about collaboration and how I help my students collaborate digitally, lots of apps sprung to mind, but I would say Jamboard was probably at the top of them. So a little bit of information about Jamboard. The basic description of Jamboard is that it's an interactive whiteboard. However, it is so much more than that. During lockdown, it was incredibly useful, as you can imagine. However, all of the examples I'm going to go over today have been post the pandemic. And I'm going to talk to you about ways that Jamboard can revolutionise the way that you collaboratively teach kind of child-led lessons in school. So the first way that I'm going to show you is that we can use the Jamboard to share ideas. So Jamboard essentially, as I said, is an interactive whiteboard. However, normally, I'm sure you've used them before, you are in charge of that whiteboard and children can see it. In Google Jamboard, children can also collaborate on it. So this was a board that we used when we were looking at kind of plastic pollution on, I think, Earth Day a few months ago. And the question in the middle was the question that I posed to my class: which materials could be used for certain objects instead of plastic? I kind of gave my class that question and then invited them all to collaborate on the Jamboard, which was on my interactive whiteboard at the front of the class. However, as all the children in the class have their own Jamboards, they can then collaborate on it. So you can see many different answers on there. And all the children did was they followed the link. We used Google Classroom to share that link. They can add a post-it note, as you can see they've done, and they added their ideas. I often get them to put their names on as well so I can see who said what. But as the children are adding these ideas to the Jamboard, it's popping up at the front of the class so everyone can see everyone's ideas. And what I could do is kind of zoom in on a few of them or pull them up so they're much larger on the screen and use them as talking points and say, okay, Yusuf, you said glass, so which products could we use glass instead of plastic for? And that was a really nice way to share ideas. Really nice idea at the beginning of a topic or beginning of a writing lesson, and to do that to get some ideas spread. You know, sometimes children struggle to get started, so this is a really nice way to do that. The next slide I'm going to show you is a little bit of a different way that I used Jamboard. I have been doing post-pandemic a virtual maths club. We are, we're in year group bubbles and that sort of thing. And it was a really nice way for children virtually. However, they could do it in the classroom as well. Makes no difference, to share what they've been doing. So a few of you might be familiar with tangrams. They're a kind of Chinese shape problem involving 7 shapes that children move around to create, as you can see, other shapes. And I shared the Jamboard with them. And we had, I think, 6 tasks to complete. I don't know, starting with the teapot shaped one that you can see. And I kind of modelled how to get started with it. It was very child-led. They worked out quite quickly. Once they had solved the kind of teapot tangram, as it were, they knew to screenshot their fully formed tangram and then paste it onto the shared Jamboard, which meant that we could all see each other's work. We could all see the different ways in which children had approached the problem, which was a discussion point. But, in the past, you might have asked a child to come up and show their piece of paper or show their Jamboard. This is, show their Chromebook. This was a much more seamless way of doing that. And as I said, it had lots of talking points that came out of it. So children can post directly, as you saw with the post-it notes. However, they can also paste onto the Jamboard too. I would say it requires a little bit of training on how to use Jamboard. We've all been there in every one of our classes, but the children get used to it very quickly in what's appropriate to use on Jamboard and what is not. But as you can see, that worked wonderfully in our virtual maths club. The final way that I'm going to show you how I have used Google Jamboard is this. So this was a resource that we created as a class. So very simply, it was a lesson, a grammar lesson on synonyms and antonyms. We started looking at synonyms for said, so other words for said. And the children, as I said, I shared the Jamboard with them. They could collaborate on it and hear all of their ideas. So earlier, it was really nice to share ideas, and that might get them started with writing. However, for this one, what I could do is every single child had their own synonym. We put them together, and then I could print that and put it on the working wall, or I could they could put it in their books. We could put it back on the interactive whiteboard when they were writing later that week. But that was such a nice way to really quickly create a resource, rather than a few years ago me sitting there and thinking about all the fantastic words they could use. We went through them as a class, and obviously children might have a few misconceptions and they might have written the wrong word, but you can pull that up on the big screen and have a class discussion about it. And they're my 3 ways that I use Jamboard. However, there are many, many. As I said at the beginning, it's really an interactive whiteboard with a real difference. And it's so child-friendly and easy to use. So that is the kind of main way I would say that I use collaboration on the Chromebooks. The next way that I'm going to be talking about how I use digital apps in lessons is for communication. Oh, sorry, good point. Sorry, I'm just going to show you. Very good point. I know that me kind of describing how to use Jamboard can be a bit overwhelming. So what I thought I'd do is show you how to use it instead. So we're going to click the Let's Give It a Go button. You don't need to do that at home, don't worry. And a link is going to be posted in the chat to this stream. All you need to do is click it. And there will be a question that you can see on the screen. Really, really simple question today is, where are you watching from today? So as you can see on my screen now, there are all the tools down the left-hand side. As I said, it's very, very child-friendly. So there are pen tools, you've got the eraser, the mouse is perfect for everything. You can add Post-its, you can add pictures. As I said, the children would do that later. However, the Post-its is what we're going to focus on today. So give it a go if you're watching at home. And where are you watching from today? You can add it in a little Post-it. I'm sure, as you can see watching, the kind of avatars in the top right corner are who is active on that Jamboard at that time. In my class, there'll be initials for each child, so I'll be able to see which children are on it. And you can also see little avatars next to the Post-it notes, which means you can see who is typing on that one, who is moving it around. Sometimes children like to move them around a lot. It's very exciting for them. And you're able to shut that down quite quickly because you can see exactly who that is. So I can see loads of you are already kind of adding to my Jamboard and telling us whereabouts you're watching from. Hopefully by doing that, you can see what I have said in action and see that it's very simple to use indeed. And as I said, very, very child-friendly. So now you have access to Jamboard. All you need to do for Jamboard, if you're on a Google Chrome device, is type in Jamboard, open a new one. However, you can also get the app on the Chrome store too, and you're in. It runs off your Google account. So that is a little bit about Jamboard.
Just before we go on, we've got a question in on Jamboard, is that right? So we've had a question come in on Jamboard, and we'll just get that up on screen for you. Can someone read the question out? Because I can't see. So the question is, I think the question from Alice.
So Alice said, looking for top tips to keep the momentum going with the use of Chromebooks, or was that from earlier?
Yeah, it was the more recent question, I think.
How do you manage children adding stickies at the same time? Often they add a sticky note and then they land on the top left corner. Often a little confusion follows. That's a great question. Obviously, I said I'm in year 6. Children in my class are 11 years old. Quite mature, but I think this can be done across the board. What I often say is once my children, all 30 of them, added their sticky note, is I will assign one child she's the only person who can move them around. So everyone else, they will add their Post-it notes and kind of half close their Chromebooks. I think we call it Pac-Manning our Chromebooks. And then one child is assigned she is allowed to move them around, etc. So then in the end, it looks beautifully neat. Obviously, I can imagine they all do kind of end up at the same point. But that's what I do. I assign one child to do that. And then in 2 or 3 minutes, they're kind of spread out nicely. And they also get very excited in competing for who that's going to be. So that's how I do it. I'm not sure if anyone has Any other suggestions? Are we happy?
Another way that we've done it as well in year 4, just to add on to that, is you can also set up a slide per table. So then that's less children we find all on one sort of slide deck. So if you had one table set on one slide and we name them slide 1, slide 2, slide up to 6, usually 5 or 6 tables, then that usually obviously is less children all on one page at a time. That kind of really works for us in year 4 for preventing confusion.
I think that Jess said great task for a digital leader job role, and that's what our digital leaders, as you know, at our schools, and children will get quite competitive about that, but that would be exactly, a perfect role for them. Moving on from Jamboard, I'm going to talk a little bit about an app which has improved, I would say, communication along with collaboration. They often go hand in hand regardless, don't they? And that is Nearpod. So Nearpod is, as Andy said, it's an app that you can download in the Chrome store, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. So this is an app that can link to your Google Slides. It can link to your PowerPoint presentations, and it can integrate perfectly with them. So you would go to the Nearpod website. You can open a slideshow in that. I'm going to show you later a bit of a reading comprehension lesson that we did. And you can open your slides in that, and you can add so many different activities on there. So on the screen now will be a few of the different activities that you can add to your slides. At the top, there are 10 activity slides that you can use. So I'll show you an example in a minute, but if I was doing a reading comprehension lesson and we're looking at a text, my one's about penguins, for example, you might have the text on one slide, do a few kind of quick activities with the children, and then add in a Nearpod activity. And as you can see, there are a variety of them. So we have the open-ended question feature. Really simply, you go onto Nearpod, you can add a question onto your Jamboard, and children will be able to log in. There's a code that they will put in, it's very seamless, and open the question. Formative assessment with Nearpod is very, very easy to do. Again, I will show you in a bit later. You'll be able to immediately see every answer that children have put. It's a really, really quick way to judge whether children are on the right lines or not, and whether they have a good understanding of the text, for example. You can add matching pairs questions. I find that's really useful for matching vocabulary. So what does this word mean? There are a few different definitions, and they can match it. Children can draw. We have Chromebooks that have styluses attached, which is really useful. So you might say, here's a character description of someone, draw what you think they look like. And it will really nicely, children can do it on their Chromebooks or their laptops, and it collaborates them all together. There are polls in there, fill in the blanks. I mean, you can see the other ones. The other activity I want to explain, as it might not be easy to understand immediately, is the time to climb. Essentially, it's a kind of gamified kind of quiz, as it were. So children are given their own avatar, and you might give them 6 multiple choice questions to answer. If they get it right, they will be able to see themselves climbing up the mountain. If they get it wrong, they'll stay in the same place. So I would say even in year 6 down to year 1 for us, children get very competitive about this. They love creating their own avatar very quickly and seeing who can get to the top of the mountain the fastest. I would say it's live participation, which means that you can control the pace that the children work at. So obviously, I know in year 6, I gave the children 6 multiple choice questions. They might whiz through them. However, with Nearpod, the beautiful thing you can do is you can control the pace of the lesson. So they won't be able to move on until you say so. However, there is also student participation pace, which means if you'd like them to go through a whole Nearpod at their own pace, that's also available to them. The resources at the bottom are resources that are intrinsically linked in to Nearpod, and these are just a selection. There are so many. So there's a VR field trip function, which means children can, if you have that virtual reality devices, they can link to that. Otherwise, they can just go on their Chromebooks and see 360-degree views of honestly thousands of places around the world. So as I said, the one that I'm going to show you later is a reading comprehension about penguins. And that was a really nice slide that you just pop in. All I needed to do for that was to click on the Nearpod 3D, type in penguins, and there were honestly hundreds of zoos and environments around the world that the children can get a 360-degree view of, which is really great for discussion and writing and reading lessons. The list goes on. As you can see, it's linked to BBC Video. There are so many resources. I'm not going to go into them all now, but there's, I would say, a resource there for everyone in that sense. So there are some of the activities you can do. What I'm going to do now is show you what I mean, just like I did with Jamboard. So this was an open-ended question that I posed to my class after we'd read our text about penguins. And what I've done there, obviously it's very small for you to see, but at the top I'd kind of snipped the actual paragraph itself. If the children had this on their devices, they'd be able to click on that picture, the text would be blown up a bit, and they'd be able to zoom in and read the question. So I asked them during breeding season, where do the penguins go? And then all of the 30 children could collaborate and give me their answers. So a quick form of formative assessment. You can see some of their answers there. This can either be displayed on your interactive whiteboard, or you can keep it to yourself if you'd rather. So that's the open-ended question function. If we click on example lesson, I'll just show you what it will look like for the children. That's my view. The children can't see each other's answers. That would be harsh for them. But I'm just going to show you what the children can see when it loads in a second. As I said, it's very child-friendly, and all they'll be able to see is the question itself. Here we go. So they would have read that question, and if we flick through, we'll just flick through very quickly. They read the question. This is our lesson. As you can see, it's on a Google Slides format. And once we go through the slides, you can skip through these quite quickly. This is what we would do. So the children had their text on their Chromebooks, and we'd find the words the fastest. If we skip through these, we'll get to the Nearpod activity in a second. I think it's after this one. Lots of fastest finger firsts. Here we go. So this was the matching pairs activity that I spoke to you about. So you can see there are some words there and some definitions. All the children need to do is match them together. So nice and child-friendly on their screens. And then if we come off this, I'll show you what that looks like on mine. Perfect. So on the next slide, the children can see there. I can see the correct answers on my device, and you'll have the results there. So you can see 4 different results there. I can see that all children got 6 out of 6, which is perfect. However, 6 of them one of them took 6 attempts or 6 clicks to get there. So Rohan at the top, he did it the first time. Some children took slightly longer to get that. So you can see it took them 25 tries, as it were, to get 6 out of 6. So again, really quick formative assessment that I can see the rest of the class can't. I think just go on to the next slide. And I just thought I'd end with showing you how easy it is to use. So you can see there a bit of a mixture of my Google Slides that I'd created on slides 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When you go onto Nearpod, all you have to do is click Add Slide, Add Activity, and it will integrate them fully into the slideshow, and you can kind of swap them around, and it's a really nice basis of seeing what it all looks like. So yeah, a really fantastic way to build both communication and collaboration into your normal PowerPoints or your normal slides, make it a bit more child-led and engaging for them. So 2 ways that I hope are useful for you.
Just before we move on to creativity and innovation, I just want to jump in a couple of comments and different pieces in the chat. So the first one, as Jess pointed out, I think in the chat earlier, is people may have seen at the Anywhere School a couple of weeks ago, Google announced add-ons for Google Classroom. So for people with Education Plus and Education Standard, I think it is accounts, the ability to integrate these third-party apps straight into Classroom. And one of the apps they announced was Nearpod. So Nearpod coming in. We've had a question as well from Rodri, I think, in the chat about which versions of Nearpod. So Nearpod, there is a free version, and there's a lot of tools and question types within the free version. And then, of course, there are some subscription tools as well. I think he asked which version have you got at Leo, and I'm just looking across. They have got the subscription version at Leo that they're using here. So there are different versions. And again, you can go onto nearpod.com and have a look at the different versions yourself. So that's that tool. Okay, so we're now going to move on to talk about creativity and innovation.
Hello, my name's Joanne Govia and I'm a Year 4 teacher and I'm here to talk to you about creativity. If you know me, my main sort of thing is art and design, sort of where I come from, my background, so this is definitely an area that I would enjoy to share with you. I'm mainly going to talk about Adobe Spark to start us off on our creativity today. Again, some of you may have used it before, but it's a really excellent way to allow children to showcase their work in very creative kind of ways. There's lots of different formats that children can use, and kind of once you've done that initial kind of showing them how to use it, they can usually be fairly quite independent. And I'm talking from a sort of Year 4 point of view. So they have produced some excellent work this year at the sort of like their end goals. So on my next slide, I've just got to show you how we kind of used it to sort of show the children, showcase their work at the end. So we've used another thing called ThingLink, which I will also be talking about a bit later in the creative thinking, critical thinking part. And this was a part of a history topic. So the children had to learn about the ancient Romans, and then we wanted them to look about landmarks. So this was something that the teachers created for Year 4 to give the children the information first. So this was a nice ThingLink. So again, at your own leisure, you can click on the link later to explore this. But if you've ever used it before, it has lots of different icons and things that children can click on to access YouTube videos, information, anything that was kind of interesting. So we asked them firstly to take a tour independently. So they would use their own Chromebook to do that independently. Again, posting the links onto Classroom, which is easy for them to use, very seamless. And then they were allowed with headphones and things to explore at their own leisure. Then we kind of came back together to sort of answer these key questions. So what was interesting? What kind of things did you enjoy learning about? Was there anything you didn't know? Those kind of questions. And then we kind of, once they had kind of immersed themselves in looking at the Colosseum, we can then kind of just put it out to them, which was quite independent. So on the next slide, you can see the tasks the children was then asked. So I called it Research and Conquer or Create. But they had to take different landmarks then. So it was very independent. So we again had the Colosseum for the children that perhaps weren't as confident. So they had that background knowledge. But you can see a range of different landmarks there. So from the Roman times. And then we asked the children in that pink box, you can see the things they must include in their Adobe Spark. So for example, we wanted the name of the landmark, what it's famous for, where it could be found, why the Romans used it, and what was significant about it. So once they kind of had some time to research, a bit like the teachers had to create one for the Colosseum, we then kind of gave them the opportunity to use Adobe Spark in whatever means they liked. So there's options for videos, which is really useful for all children of all needs because it has a microphone option, so children can record themselves verbally speaking. I've got a very good example of that in the next slide in a moment. They can add videos, they can add text as well, which can be typed, they can add photos. So it's a really nice way of them sort of compiling lots of different kind of media together to sort of showcase their learning. On the next slide, if we could click maybe on the first student sample, again, these slides will hopefully be shared so you can look at these at your leisure, but this is one that was made from a child in my class. Very good, very able child. She has recorded herself. We've got animation on it, we've got videos, we've got picture, and she's also got text typed as well. So we maybe don't need to watch it all, but just to get a little feel for it. So very independent, so they can sort of have a video and split their slide deck, so they can have an image on one side, text on another, they can record their voices, which is really nice, but very independent. So it's very much like the teacher does the input and then we sort of hand over to the children once you've kind of got that past that initial stage. If anybody wanted to know how we sort of taught the children to pick up Adobe, we actually, having me personally worked with the same year group twice, in Year 3 we actually set them a topic to make a Adobe Spark video about themselves. So it was quite easy because obviously had lots of knowledge about themselves, and that was a really nice friendly way for them to start to get to use it. We also did another activity to build on that, where they had to do half of, as you can see sometimes it's split, they had to do half about themselves and half about their partner. So that was another way to sort of build up those skills. And then once they had that kind of basic knowledge of how to use it, they were able to then sort of, it can lend itself to lots of different resources, different topics. So we've used them for writing. So recently they've done sweet advertisements and they've kind of done voiceovers. We've also used it in a moment, you'll see on the next slide, for display as well, which I also wanted to talk about in a moment. So when you get shared these, you can obviously feel free to go through and have a look at them at your leisure. There's a few samples there for you to have a look at. And then also that last thing as well, we don't necessarily need to open it now, but there's some screenshots just from Google Classroom to show you how the children can upload them. If you want to have a look at that quickly, you can. So in their Google Classroom, once they have published, that's one thing I will say, you need to make sure they always remember to publish the link, finalise it. But you can see there is some snippets from Google Classroom, hopefully when they load up, but just showing you how the children load their codes. And what's really nice is all the children, a bit like Natasha said, for collaboration and communication, they can then click on each other's links and sort of watch them. You might have also noticed, and if not when you look at them at your leisure, you can also appreciate the children's work underneath, which is quite nice. So when the children look at each other's, we usually encourage them to try and give each other some appreciation as well, which is really nice. I don't think it's going to load. Yeah, so you can just see there's the task on the top box there that I've loaded up, just showing that I created the assignment. And if you just scroll down for me, you should be able to see on the next one. So this is all these blue links, and you can see the couple of long ones. But again, like Natasha said, it's very easy then to pull that up and say to that child, right, you haven't published yours, so I can't access that. So the ones, the longer links, you can see where they haven't formally published it yet. But it's really nice. And again, sometimes you can see them actually commenting back to each other and things like that, which is really lovely to see. So this one girl, this is a girl's video we watched actually, Ivana, then decided to make an Adobe Spark to tell everybody well done as well, which was really lovely. So yeah, so that's kind of how it works and how it can be linked with Google Classroom. If we just go on to the next slide, sorry, thank you. But I just wanted to say as well, and something I was thinking about today, that it's all very well them children creating these lovely videos and we get to watch them once, but then we want to see how can we showcase that around the wider school as well. So I'm very passionate about my cooking, and we did a very nice lockdown topic for cookery, but some of these videos were also created post-lockdown. But you might be able to see on the screen of the photo, or again at your leisure later, zoom in, you can see there are QR codes. So it's really nice when we have visitors and things in school. You know, adults can use a mobile phone to scan it if they have a QR scanner, and it will take them directly to the children's videos. Alternatively, children, we're very fortunate to have ones with cameras and things that they can actually use their Chromebook and hold it up in the corridor to watch each other's as well. So it's not just hidden in a child's Chromebook and just the teacher sees it. It's something that can also hopefully be showcased around your school. And I think that's me done on Adobe.
Great, thank you. Don't forget, questions at all about using Chromebooks in the classroom. For any of the team here at Leo Academy Trust, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and at the end we will run through any questions we haven't already answered. So on to critical thinking.
Okay, it's back to me again. So critical thinking, I'm really excited about this topic. This is something that I've definitely been doing post-lockdown within the last few weeks, actually, in class, in fact, just last week. And again, at the end, I'll show you something that I asked the children to do for me today to see whether this actually had an effect. So for critical thinking and really trying to think about the children's writing, I've been using a thing called ThingLink. So if you just go on to my next one. So I was trying to see how we could really, and as like Angie said at the beginning of the session, not just having the Chromebook as, you know, something that will enhance learning, not just as an add-on or, you know, another way of doing that task. So we're really trying to look in year 4 at the moment about how technology can help develop creative writing. So if you just hop onto the next one. The reason I like ThingLink, again, I thought this was quite a funny picture last night when I was thinking about this. It does exactly what it says on the tin. So thing and link. You can just link endless different resources, sounds, as the icon shows, text, video, you name it, you can link it. So it's a really nice way to kind of make sure, like as Natasha was saying, sometimes at the start of the topic, where you have everything that you might need all in one place for a teacher. So if you just hop on to the next one for me, please. We were thinking firstly about setting descriptions. So we wanted the children, we've been doing a story of Chish Chish Bang Bang, and there's a scene where the children go, the car goes into a cave, and we really wanted them to write a really rich description of this cave. Now, obviously, you know, these are the traditional ways we might think about the senses, and that kind of icon of the 5 senses really made me think of ThingLink. It's like, how else can I make sure I've got sound? Okay, maybe I can't quite have taste, but I can certainly have, you know, things for them to see, things for them to hear, and trying to give that kind of immersion. So what we did, if you can just see on to the next one, I split this into 3 paragraphs. So we had an introduction from the outside of the cave. So this is my scene in a moment from the outside. Then I had one which was just going into the cave mouth, and then finally actually deep into the cave with skeletons and bats and all those things. So on the right hand side of the screen, you can see what we use as a waggle. I'm sure lots of you are familiar with that term. It's what a good one looks like. And we very much pride ourselves here on writing high quality text for the children to unpick and immerse themselves. So what we decided to do was bring that a little bit to life. So this is the first paragraph that I used to create this first scene. And in a moment, if we click on the scene, you can see there are different points on that scene that the children can interact with. So the first part, because they hadn't used this before, we very much modelled this as the teacher for the first paragraph, which was why it was really nice splitting it into 3. So this was my cave scene, and if perhaps you could just hover maybe on one of them, so you can see there's number 1. If you click on that, you've got the hidden cave. So if you click on the photo icon, you can bring up the photos large. So I think I had several pictures on that, so you can scroll through them. So we got them to think about the picture. Then there is also space. Yeah, if you could just X that for me, thank you. If you look at the text, you can actually, so again here, this one is the sound. So again, I've got pictures of seagulls. There were some quite scary seagulls. If you look on the images, there were some ones with their beaks open. There was also then a link to a YouTube, which actually immersed them in the sound so they can really hear it. But it really got them to think on a deeper level than just, I can hear a seagull. You can also, if you just click just underneath that X on the right-hand side, can you see that little book? What was really lovely is it will actually play whatever you type in there for the children also. So kids that find it tricky to read, you know, they can actually just press this play icon. It also works for the children. If they later want to do one themselves, then they can obviously record themselves as opposed to type. So it's very good for all different abilities. So that was really nice. So that's just kind of a bit of a scary bird there, but it really got them thinking. So obviously that was the first one which we modelled. If we could just go back to the main slides and then see how that was used to go alongside traditional writing. So if you can see, we use an I go, we go, you go approach. So that blue first box, you can see next to the corresponding picture, that was the picture I've just shown you in the scene. These are all available for you to have a look at your leisure as well. And then we modelled, the questions are very much based on each of the points. So you can see the numbers correspond. On the green one then and the pink, it was kind of more over to them. So we let them explore that second scene on their own Chromebook. And then we came up with questions and things together. And then finally, on the last one, we let them be quite independent. So now they've got more used to, so we're kind of that stage of modelling through how to do it, how to use it appropriately, and actually getting some quality from it. On the next slide, again, I'm not going to read it all to you now, but please feel free to go back at these slides. The quality of the writing and the enthusiasm was so immense. The children really enjoyed it. So that first paragraph, you can see, you know, obviously green here. I know Andrew was talking about red pens, but we mark them green here for positivity. All those greens are, you know, things we're looking for. And again, if you go back to the checklist at the top, which you can look at your own leisure, you can see they've pretty much hit all the features of the 5 senses. So I think there's another couple of slides there just to prove how strong that writing was. We'll just go to the next one for me. And the next one, sorry, just go back one. I think that was a similar writing. Yeah, so some more again, but again, the length. So you can clearly see they've got their 3 paragraphs, very structured, and, you know, covered all of those things. And then lastly today, just to see, you know, again, does it have effect and have they actually enjoyed it? I posted a question on Google Classroom on the next slide. There's, I think, a few responses. I asked 6 children today who particularly are strong writers to see if it actually had improved their writing. So you just go to the next one. I just posted, which is another fun thing I've really been enjoying recently, a question onto Google Classroom. So you can actually just get them to write a response. So you can see here I've turned in 6 children I assigned it to. I've just put, have you enjoyed, sorry, that's me rushing today. Have you enjoyed using ThingLink in your writing lessons? What is good about it and how did it help you? And I just particularly like Ivana again here. It says, I've enjoyed using ThingLink because it's fun and easy to use. I think it's good because you can add sounds and images, and that helped me with my writing because I could hear the sounds of whatever I wanted to write about. So I just think that was really nice. One, you know, again, I'm very honest and reflective. If you look on the next slide, one child who was a very able writer there said she didn't really help her, although it was fun. So she agreed it was fun, but she said it was a little bit busy. And actually, having talked to a colleague today for another very able writer, they kind of said because they had their own ideas, that it was then harder to kind of focus on that. So I think it has its place definitely for the, you know, the lower ability. This is a really nice way to start to bring alive, you know, scenes and settings and things like that. So yeah, Not sure if I had the next one on there. Yes, so just very quickly, if you were going to sort of set them up, you can see a bit like Natasha showed us, there's a range of things. If I'm very honest, I've only really got to grips with image at the moment. But as you can see, you know, there are lots of different things. I quite like the idea of like this infographic and floor plans. There were so many things I saw really lovely. One other thing as well, once you start using them, you know, they will email you and send you suggestions. And I did see a really lovely thing today of like a timeline. So you had like a picture and they just added points and dates and history and verbal things and stuff like that, which was really nice. I also saw another idea that I was thinking of using, which was like a dictionary where the children recorded themselves in a different language. So they had like a glossary of different words. So lots of sort of fun things to do with ThingLink. So it's definitely quite exciting, I think. I think that's me done.
Right. And if you've got any questions now, as we go towards the end of the webinar, now is a great time to get your questions answered in the chat. So if there's anything you want to ask, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll jump back to questions in just a second. While we're giving you some time to think of your questions, put them in the chat. I just want to talk about some useful links and further information that you might need. So in terms of that, there are some useful resources you might jump to. And the first one is, don't forget, this is one series of events at bit.ly/GFE UK events. You can see the range of webinars that are available. So today we're focusing on these Chromebooks in the primary school. Later in the week, we're focusing at Aylesbury High School on the use in secondary, and a range of tool-based webinars as well at that link. So bit.ly/GFE UK events if you want to join us. Secondly, don't forget that the Teach from Anywhere hub is still available for teachers to use at teachfromanywhere.google, and that's a great resource if you're new to using devices, whether you're in school or at home. And then finally, the Teacher Centre. It's been there for a long time at g.co/Teacher Centre, and there are some great online courses there, as well as the online programs. So Google Certified Educator Level 1 and Level 2, and then on to Trainer, Innovator and Coach. If you want to develop your knowledge and skills further, the Teacher Centre is a great place to go for that information. Before we give the thank you, I want to just check on any questions to see if we've got any questions in the chat from anyone that we haven't already answered. We had a question earlier about the devices that students have got at Leo. So I don't know if someone wants to jump in and tell us about devices.
Yes, I think getting the right devices into schools is crucial.
Have we got Graham on? Yeah.
Sorry, I just check that. Yeah, so I think getting the right devices into school is absolutely crucial, and I think it's often about you get what you get what you spend. So we very much invested in Wacom devices, so touchscreen devices, and because for us in a primary setting, it was crucially important that we provide children with that handwriting experience. And it's a considerable capital investment for us, but I think it's really, really important. There are lots of manufacturers out there that you can get those sort of devices, whether that be a tablet type device, a 360 device. But yeah, we provide all of our children with a stylus. My favourite stylus of them all is the Staedtler Digital Norris ones. They're also probably the most expensive stylus as well, but they are really good, and I think they definitely have a real impact for our learners.
Thanks, Graham. And Graham is the Director of Technology at Leo Academy Trust, in case you're wondering who just popped up there to answer that question. Any other questions in the chat that we need to answer before we finish off today? Or have we covered all the questions? There's one more question. I can't see the questions. If you want to read that out for me. Have we answered it? Yeah, we've answered it. Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today on today's webinar. A big thank you to Leo Academy Trust for hosting us here in person, our first in-person event. And we look forward to seeing you all on webinar soon. Bye, everyone.